Husband divorced wife by text message and emptied 300 million joint account. Unaware she's ahead of him. He didn't even face her. One morning, Emily Carter woke up to a single message from her husband. "It's over. Don't contact me again." And before her tears could fall, she opened their bank app. The joint account showed $0. Every dollar gone. Daniel Carter, her husband of 10 years, had vanished. And beside him was Vanessa, Emily's own best friend. The same woman who once held her hand at the wedding altar now held her husband's arm in public. "You slowed me down, Emily. You'll never be enough for the life I want," Daniel had said coldly before leaving. Those words broke her heart, but not her destiny, because what Daniel didn't know was that the woman he discarded had already been prepared for this fall. Her late Aunt Miriam had left behind a hidden trust, waiting for the day he betrayed her. Sometimes the message meant to destroy a woman becomes the letter that announces her rise. Sometimes the silence she leaves behind becomes louder than his pride. This is not just a story of betrayal. It's a story of strength, of dignity, and of karma arriving right on time. Dear viewers, thank you for being here. As we begin, I ask from my heart, don't just scroll past her pain. Subscribe now and tell us where you're watching from. So Emily and every woman betrayed in silence knows she's not alone. The kettle screamed. So did her heart. Emily Carter stood in her small kitchen, sunlight spilling across the white tiles, her children's laughter echoing faintly from the living room. She had just finished packing Ethan's lunchbox when her phone buzzed on the counter. Daniel's name flashed across the screen. For a second, she smiled. Maybe he was finally checking in after 3 days of silence. She wiped her hands on her apron and opened the message. "It's over. Don't contact me again." Her smile froze. The world fell quiet, except for the whistle of the kettle and her own heartbeat pounding in her ears. She blinked once, twice, thinking it must be a mistake. Then with trembling fingers, she opened their bank app. Balance, $0. Every cent of their joint account, the same one they had built from nothing, from late nights and shared dreams, was gone. "Mom?" Ethan's small voice broke through the silence. The 10-year-old stood at the doorway, still in his school uniform, holding his sister Grace's hand. "Dad's not coming today again?" Emily tried to speak, but her throat locked. Her chest tightened as she dropped the phone. It hit the floor with a sharp crack, the screen splintering into two reflections of her face. One calm, one broken. She fell to her knees, clutching the counter for balance. Her whole body trembled. The children rushed to her, their tiny hands wrapping around her arms. "Mommy, what's wrong?" Grace whispered. Emily forced a shaky smile. "Nothing, sweetheart. Mommy's just tired." But the truth hit harder than any exhaustion. Daniel had ended everything. Their marriage, their security, their home, through a message shorter than a grocery list. Her mind replayed the last argument they'd had. He had accused her of holding him back, of being too ordinary for the world he wanted to conquer. "You'll never understand what success takes, Emily," he'd said, his voice sharp as glass. "I need a partner who moves forward, not someone who clings." That partner, she now realized, was Vanessa, her best friend, her children's godmother. The woman who had called only yesterday asking if she was okay. Emily's eyes burned. She gripped the edge of the counter to steady herself. Around her, everything seemed a blur. The toast burning in the pan, the sunlight flickering against the wall, the laughter outside from neighbors who still believed her life was perfect. But in that chaos, something hardened inside her. Beneath the pain, beneath the disbelief, a strange calm began to form. A stillness she hadn't felt in years. She turned off the kettle. The whistle faded into silence. Then she picked up her phone again, staring at the broken screen and the faint reflection of her eyes. One half full of grief, the other filled with something new. Resolve. Outside, a car door slammed. Daniel's engine roared in the driveway. Emily's breath caught. He was here. The reflection on the shattered phone lingered. Two halves of one woman, one broken, one rising. The door slammed so hard the picture frames rattled. Daniel stormed into the living room in a navy suit, face cold, movements sharp. His cologne filled the air before his words did. "Where are my files, Emily?" he barked, tossing his car keys on the couch. His tone carried no trace of the man who once whispered dreams into her ear. Emily turned from the kitchen doorway, her hands trembling. "Daniel, why would you do this?" Her voice cracked. "Why end everything through a text? Why take all the money?" He didn't even flinch. "Because it's mine," he said flatly. "I built that company. I earned every cent while you sat here doing nothing." Her heart thudded. "Nothing?" she whispered. "I stood by you when everyone left. I worked nights when you couldn't pay your staff. I raised our children while you chased your empire." Daniel smirked. "And now look at you, clinging to pity like it's a trophy." He grabbed his suitcase from under the stairs. "You slow me down, Emily. I need someone who matches my pace." "Vanessa?" The name escaped her lips like poison. He froze, just for a moment. Then a cruel smile curved on his face. "At least she understands me," he said, his tone cutting through the air like a knife. Emily's knees weakened. "She was my friend," she whispered. Daniel shrugged. "People change. You should try it sometime." Ethan appeared at the hallway, clutching Grace's small hand. "Daddy, where are you going?" The boy's voice was steady, too old for his age. Daniel didn't look at him. "Somewhere better," he said coldly. "Your mother will explain." Grace ran to him, holding his leg. "Don't go, Daddy, please." He pushed her away gently but without warmth. "Let go, Grace. You'll understand when you're older." Emily's tears fell freely now. "How can you just walk away from your children?" He turned, voice sharp. "Because they remind me of you." For a moment, silence filled the house. Thick, choking silence. Even the clock seemed afraid to tick. Emily straightened, wiping her tears with the back of her hand. "You'll regret this, Daniel. Not because I'll destroy you, but because someday you'll need what you threw away today." He scoffed, slinging his suit jacket over his shoulder. "Regret is for the weak." As he walked to the door, a car horn sounded outside. Vanessa sat waiting in his silver sedan, sunglasses on, a smug smile painted across her lips. Their children watched through the window as he stepped out, kissed her cheek, and drove away without a single glance back. Emily stood frozen, the echo of the closing door ringing louder than any words he could have said. Ethan's small voice broke the silence. "Mom," he whispered, "are we still a family?" Her chest tightened. She knelt beside him, forcing a faint smile. "We're still us, sweetheart. That's all that matters." But deep inside, a storm had begun to stir. Ethan's eyes lingered on the driveway. Dark and steady, the same gaze his father once had when chasing power. The neighbors gathered before she could even breathe. Daniel's voice thundered through the quiet street as he dragged 2 suitcases across the marble porch. "I said, get out, Emily. Take your things and go." His shout echoed through the neighborhood like a warning bell. Curtains lifted. Phones appeared. Emily stood on the doorstep in her faded pink housecoat, her children clinging to her sides. "Daniel, please," she begged softly, her voice trembling. "Let's talk inside, not here. The kids are watching." But Daniel had already switched to his cruelest mask, the one he wore when pride spoke louder than reason. "You should have thought of that before you ruined everything. I'm done pretending." He hurled one suitcase down the steps. It burst open, scattering her clothes onto the wet pavement. A silk scarf she once wore to his company's gala drifted in the wind like a fallen flag. Across the street, Karen Lewis, their nosy neighbor, stood with her phone raised. Karen loved drama more than peace, and today she had front row seats. "Lord have mercy," she whispered, pressing record. Her camera captured every tear, every shout, every humiliation. Emily took a hesitant step forward. "Please, Daniel, not in front of the children." He turned to the crowd, voice dripping with venom. "This woman thinks she owns me. I'm tired of being chained to weakness. She's not my wife anymore. She's a liability." The words hit harder than any slap. Ethan stiffened beside her, his small hands balled into fists. Grace began to cry, hiding her face in her mother's dress. Emily bent down, whispering, "It's okay, baby. Mommy's here." But her voice cracked halfway through the promise. Then Daniel pointed toward the driveway. "Your ride's over there." Emily followed his gesture and froze. Vanessa sat inside Daniel's car, engine humming, sunglasses hiding her smirk. The same woman who once toasted at their wedding, who once held Grace at her baptism, was now sitting in the front seat of betrayal. The sight burned. Emily's knees weakened. "You brought her here," Daniel smiled coldly. "She's family now." The crowd gasped. Even Karen lowered her phone for a moment. The humiliation was complete. Public, permanent, deliberate. Daniel walked to his car without looking back. "You and your pity can rot together," he muttered. The tires screeched, splashing muddy water across Emily's dress. She didn't move. She couldn't. For a moment, the only sound was Grace's sobs and the gentle rustle of the wind. Then Emily slowly bent to pick up her scattered clothes one by one. Her hands shook, but her face remained steady. The woman who once cried easily now looked blank. Not from weakness, but from something deeper forming within. Survival. Karen's phone camera caught the final shot. Emily kneeling in the dirt, children beside her, mud-stained and silent. That video would soon go viral with the caption, "Wife thrown out by billionaire husband." And somewhere deep inside Emily's shattered heart, a quiet voice whispered, "This isn't the end." Karen's phone saved the video automatically under a folder name, 2025 Divorce. A file destiny would one day reopen. The thunder outside roared like it wanted to shake the earth. Emily jumped awake at the sound, heart pounding. For a second, she didn't know where she was. Then she saw the dim glow of the bakery sign through the small window. Cole's Bread and Heart. The smell of freshly baked loaves filled the air, and her daughter Grace lay curled up beside her, breathing softly. Ethan sat at the edge of the bed, staring out the window as if waiting for something to change. "Couldn't sleep?" she asked gently. He turned, eyes red. "I just keep hearing his voice, Mom. The way he said you ruined everything." Her chest tightened. "You didn't ruin anything, sweetheart. Some people just forget what love means when they have too much power." She reached out, brushing his hair back. "One day you'll understand that kindness isn't weakness." Downstairs, the bell above the bakery door chimed faintly. Morning had come. Emily pulled on her coat and helped Harriet with the cleaning. The bakery was warm, alive, the air humming with soft music and the sound of laughter from early customers. Harriet hummed a hymn as she wiped down the counter. "You slept well?" Harriet asked, glancing over her shoulder. Emily nodded. "Better than I have in weeks. Thank you for letting us stay." Harriet smiled. "You don't owe me thanks. Pain shared is half lifted, dear. You helped me bake, you've already paid." Emily smiled faintly. It was the first real smile in days. She picked up a cloth and began to wipe a wooden shelf behind the counter. But when she opened one of the drawers, her hand brushed something stiff. An old sealed envelope tucked deep beneath a stack of papers. The handwriting stopped her breath. It was careful, looping, and painfully familiar. "To Emily, when all is lost, open this." Her heart raced. She turned the envelope over. On the back was a wax seal with a crest she hadn't seen in years. A small G surrounded by ivy leaves. "Aunt Miriam," she whispered. Harriet paused mid-song. "You okay, honey?" Emily nodded slowly, voice trembling. I think this is from my aunt. She passed years ago." Harriet looked curious. "Maybe you should see what's inside." Emily's hands shook as she tore the seal. Inside was a letter, yellowed but perfectly preserved, along with a business card. The letter read, "My dear Emily, if you are reading this, it means the man you trusted has done the very thing I feared. Do not despair. Go to the name on this card. She will show you what I've kept for you, and for your children. With love, Aunt Miriam Gray." The business card bore a name, Clara Reed, attorney at law. Emily sat down hard, tears filling her eyes. Not from pain this time, but something else. Hope. She looked at Harriet, voice trembling. She knew, even before it happened. Harriet smiled softly. Sometimes God sends warnings in envelopes. Emily folded the letter carefully, pressing it to her chest. For the first time, she felt a flicker of strength return. The card's embossed logo read Gray Trust Holdings. Emily didn't yet know it, but that name would soon change her life forever. The bakery door flew open just as the morning rush began. A tall woman in a gray suit stepped inside. raindrops glinting on her shoulders. Her expression was calm, but her eyes were sharp, the kind that noticed everything. She scanned the small shop before her gaze landed on Emily, who was serving coffee behind the counter. "Mrs. Emily Carter?" the woman asked firmly. Emily froze, unsure whether to answer. "Yes, that's me," she said cautiously. The woman extended a hand. "I'm Clara Reed, attorney at law. I believe you found something belonging to your late aunt, Miriam Gray?" Emily's breath caught. The name felt like a door swinging open inside her chest. "Yes, I found a letter yesterday. She said you would help me." Clara nodded. "Then let's talk, privately." Harriet looked up from the oven, flour streaked across her cheek. "You can use the back room," she said, her voice soft but curious. As the two women disappeared through the door, Harriet whispered to herself, "Whatever this is, I hope it's the good kind of surprise." Inside the small office, Clara placed a leather briefcase on the table. "Your aunt was a brilliant woman," she began. "She built a fortune under her maiden name, Miriam Gray, to protect it from anyone who might exploit her heirs. You were her closest living relative." Emily blinked in disbelief. "My aunt? But she was just a teacher. She never had money." Clara smiled faintly. "She had more than money. She had foresight. When she fell ill, she created a trust fund, Gray Trust Holdings, with one condition: the assets would only transfer to you if you were betrayed by your spouse." Emily's hand went to her mouth. "Betrayed?" Clara opened her briefcase and pulled out several documents. "Mrs. Carter, your husband's text message and his unauthorized withdrawal of your joint funds both qualify as proof. The trust is now legally yours, valued at $500 million. The words seemed too heavy for the air. Emily's world spun. 500? She couldn't finish the sentence. Clara leaned forward. "This isn't just money, Mrs. Carter. It's power and protection. Your aunt wanted you to have both." Tears welled in Emily's eyes. "She always said life tests us through heartbreaks. I thought she meant grief, not this." Clara's voice softened. "Sometimes betrayal is the doorway to freedom." Emily looked down at her shaking hands. The same hands Daniel had once mocked as too soft for business now held documents that could rebuild her future. "What do I do now?" she asked quietly. Clara handed her a small key. "You learn, you heal, and when you're ready, you'll decide what kind of legacy you want to build. Your aunt believed you'd know when that moment comes." Emily stared at the key, feeling the weight of destiny resting between her fingers. Outside, thunder rolled again, not as threat, but as promise. As Clara left, she turned at the door. "The law remembers what love forgets," she said. And on the bakery counter, a child's crayon drawing of a heart sat drying. The same heart that would soon become the logo of Emily's empire. The oven timer rang like an alarm for a new life. Emily pulled a tray of bread from the bakery's oven, steam rising in soft clouds around her face. Her hair was tied in a messy bun, flour dusting her cheeks, and her once trembling hands now worked with calm precision. It had been 3 weeks since the meeting with Clara Reed, and each day had rebuilt a piece of her shattered self. But the transformation wasn't just emotional, it was strategic. Hidden behind the back wall of Harriet's bakery, Emily had set up a small corner desk with her laptop, notebooks, and Clara's documents. By day, she baked. By night, she studied business law and finance through online courses. Her children often slept beside her on the couch as she typed through the night, whispering lessons from her late aunt's letter. "Don't chase the man who broke you. Build something he'll never reach." "Mom," Ethan called from the stairs, holding up a notebook filled with crayon sketches. "Grace made a logo for your company idea." Emily turned, smiling as Grace ran toward her, clutching a paper in her small hands. It showed a heart shape drawn in red, surrounded by 2 tiny hands. Beneath it were shaky letters, Haven Foods. Grace grinned. "It means a safe place, like Miss Harriet's bakery." Emily knelt, hugging her children tightly. "It's perfect," she whispered. Her eyes glistened. "You just named Mommy's new dream." Harriet, overhearing from the counter, chuckled warmly. "Haven Foods," she said, wiping her hands on her apron. "Has a ring to it. Feeds the stomach and the soul. Emily smiled. That's the goal, to help families like ours, ones who've been forgotten. As days passed, she began baking her own recipes and packaging them neatly with simple labels. Customers started asking for that soft bread by the quiet lady. Harriet proudly told everyone, that's Emily Carter's magic. But at night, away from the warmth of the bakery, Emily's thoughts often drifted to Daniel. She had seen him on the news recently, confident, successful, smiling beside Vanessa. They had just announced the expansion of Horizon Industries, Daniel's company. Reporters praised their unstoppable partnership. She didn't cry this time. Instead, she whispered to herself, keep shining, Daniel. The higher you fly, the harder you'll fall. Still, a part of her felt the ache, not for him, but for the family that could have been. She looked at her sleeping children and swore quietly, you'll never suffer because of him again. Weeks later, Clara called with news. Your trust account has matured. You're officially the controlling shareholder of Gray Trust Holdings. Emily's breath caught. The same company Daniel's empire unknowingly depended on for supply contracts. She turned toward the bakery window. The morning sun broke through the clouds, reflecting off the freshly hung sign that read, Haven Foods, a place to begin again. Her heart steadied. She was ready for the next chapter. Outside, a newspaper headline fluttered in the wind before landing at her feet. Daniel Carter expands Horizon Industries. Emily picked it up slowly, her eyes narrowing. Good, she whispered. Let's feed them first. The video started with a crackle of static and the sound of soft humming. Emily sat motionless in Clara Reed's office, her palms cold against the table. On the laptop screen flickered the familiar face of Aunt Miriam Gray, recorded years before her passing. The older woman's voice filled the room, low and calm, like she was speaking from another world. If you're watching this, my dear Emily, Miriam began, then he's done what I always feared. Don't cry. Don't chase him. Build something he can never buy back. Emily's throat tightened. She hadn't heard that voice in years. The video continued. A message not just of inheritance, but of preparation. I left behind more than wealth. I left you the blueprint to rise again. Hidden under the name E, Gray Holdings is your key. Use it quietly, wisely. The world doesn't need your tears. It needs your strength. Emily covered her mouth, her eyes wet but steady. Clara leaned forward slightly, her expression firm. Your aunt wasn't just wealthy. She was strategic. She predicted betrayal before it happened. She knew Daniel, Emily whispered. She saw through him when I couldn't. Clara nodded. Miriam was ahead of her time. She built multiple shell companies under your initials. You own more influence in this city than your husband can imagine. He just doesn't know who E. Gray is. The truth felt like fire spreading through Emily's veins. E. Gray, she repeated softly. Emily Gray, my mother's maiden name. That's right, Clara said, sliding over a tablet showing a list of active supply chains. And guess who one of your biggest clients is? Emily's eyes widened as she read the name at the top. Horizon Industries, Daniel's company. For a long moment, she couldn't breathe. Her ex-husband's empire was already being quietly fed, financed, stocked, and stabilized by her own holdings. A small, ironic smile touched her lips. He's been eating from my hands without even knowing it. Clara's tone softened. Sometimes justice doesn't scream, Emily. Sometimes it waits. The lawyer stood, collecting her files. The trust gives you freedom. What you do next, that's your legacy. But remember, stay silent. Never reveal who E. Gray is, not yet. Emily nodded. I won't. I'll let him believe he's untouchable. As Clara left, Emily sat in the quiet room, staring at the frozen image of her aunt's smiling face on the laptop screen. The voice still echoed in her mind. Don't chase him. Build something he can never buy back. Outside the window, the sky had begun to glow gold. It wasn't the fiery red of anger anymore. It was dawn, warm and patient. Emily took out her notebook and began writing the first steps of her plan. At the top, she wrote 3 words in bold letters, the Haven Project. And just before she closed the laptop, a soft beep came. A new notification, an order confirmation. Horizon Industries had just renewed a major contract with E. Gray Holdings. As Emily smiled faintly, unaware, the invoice printer spat out one last page, her signature in bold, E. Gray. A name Daniel would soon learn the hard way. The television blared through the bakery's soft morning calm. "Breaking business news," announced the anchor with excitement. Daniel Carter, CEO of Horizon Industries, praises new supplier E. Gray Holdings for exceptional performance and ethical standards. He calls the partnership a model of excellence. The sound of his voice made Emily's heart lurch. She froze mid-motion, a tray of warm pastries trembling in her hands. On the screen, Daniel stood in a crisp navy suit, his arm proudly wrapped around Vanessa's waist. Cameras flashed as he smiled, that same confident, practiced smile she once loved. Vanessa's laugh followed, high and clear. "We only work with the best," she said, leaning toward the microphone. "E. Gray Holdings has transformed our operations completely." Emily's lips parted slightly. Her breath hitched, part disbelief, part irony. They don't even know who E. Gray is. Beside her, Harriet switched off the TV, her face stormy. "That man has some nerve. He ruins your life, and now he's making money off your name. Literally." Emily exhaled slowly, setting the tray down. "It's fine, Harriet. Let him eat. The higher he climbs, the more painful the fall." Harriet stared at her. "You're a strange kind of strong, Emily Carter." Emily smiled faintly, brushing flour from her palms. "Maybe strength isn't about shouting. Maybe it's about waiting until the right silence makes the loudest sound." She turned back to her workstation, the steady rhythm of kneading dough calming her heartbeat. But inside, her mind was racing, connecting dots, planning ahead. Her business was expanding faster than she expected. Orders flooded in. Clara had helped her register Haven Foods Lake Deed as a branch under E. Gray Holdings, using local vendors and charitable partnerships. Emily now employed women who had also been abandoned, widowed, or overlooked. Women like her. Every loaf, every pastry, every delivery carried quiet purpose. One evening, as she checked invoices in the back office, Ethan entered with a curious expression. "Mom, are we rich now?" Emily smiled gently. "We're safe, sweetheart. That's better than rich." He nodded, thinking for a moment. "Then why don't you tell Dad what you did? Why keep it secret?" She looked at him carefully. "Because, Ethan, sometimes truth hits harder when it walks instead of runs." Her son tilted his head, trying to understand, but then smiled softly. "I think Aunt Miriam would be proud of you." Emily's eyes softened. "I hope so." As night settled, she lingered by the bakery window, the city lights reflecting on the glass. For the first time, she felt no bitterness, only balance. But then a newspaper fluttered under the door. She picked it up absently, and her breath caught. The headline read, "Horizon Industries faces government audit after anonymous complaint." She stared at it, heartbeat quickening. Somewhere deep inside, she knew this was no coincidence. A single page slipped from the paper, a photo of Daniel shaking hands with a man in glasses. The caption read, "CFO Trevor Miles under investigation," a name that would soon tie every thread together. The night was cold and heavy with rain. Emily sat by the bakery window, her laptop glowing faintly in the dark. Outside, the streets of Willow Avenue were empty, except for the steady drizzle against the glass. The newspaper with the audit headline lay open beside her. Her pulse quickened as she reread the name. Trevor Miles, CFO of Horizon Industries. She clicked her pen twice, a nervous habit she'd picked up since the divorce, and sent one short message to Clara Reed. "It's time to trace everything." Within hours, Clara had arranged a discreet meeting in her office. There she introduced two new allies, Marcus Hale, a quiet forensic accountant with tired eyes, and Mia Foster, a young intern with more courage than experience. Marcus spoke first, his tone steady but urgent. "Mrs. Carter, Horizon Industries has been moving funds through offshore accounts under fake subsidiaries. Some of those names match your trust's inactive holdings. They might be using your late aunt's old networks." Emily leaned forward. "You mean Daniel is using my inheritance to cover his crimes?" Mia nodded, opening a folder. "Not directly, but his CFO, Trevor Miles, is transferring money to a shell group called Van D Holdings." She hesitated before adding, The name combines Vanessa and Daniel. The words hit like thunder. Emily sat back slowly, her jaw tightening. So they've not only taken what's mine, they've named their theft after themselves. Clara watched her carefully. If we expose this too soon, he'll hide the evidence. We need to build the full chain quietly. Marcus slid a flash drive across the table. I've been collecting records for weeks. Give me time, and I can trace every stolen dollar. Emily took the drive and held it in her palm, feeling its weight like a secret weapon. Do it, she said softly, but no one can know who's behind this. Mia's young voice broke the tension. Mrs. Carter, how do you stay so calm after everything? Emily turned to her, her expression gentle but firm. Because pain taught me patience, and patience builds justice. The room fell silent. Outside, lightning flashed, illuminating the rain-streaked windows like veins of light. Over the next few weeks, their small circle worked in secret, emails coded, data hidden under harmless bakery orders, files named after pastry recipes. No one outside the group knew the truth. Not even Harriet, who simply thought Emily was expanding Haven Foods faster than expected. Every night, Emily reviewed the progress while her children slept beside her. Ethan sometimes woke and whispered, Mom, are you winning? She always smiled and said, Not yet, sweetheart, but soon. By the end of the month, Marcus had mapped out the entire chain, a paper trail that linked Daniel, Vanessa, and Trevor directly to millions in diverted funds. Emily stared at the final report, her heartbeat steady but fierce. Not yet, she whispered. Let him keep shining a little longer. As she closed her laptop, an email arrived from an unknown sender. Subject line, He's planning something big, and it's about to blow. The gala lights shimmered across the ballroom like gold fire. Daniel Carter stood at the center of it all, surrounded by applause, cameras, and the perfect illusion of power. The event banner read, Horizon Industries Expansion Celebration. Reporters swarmed, microphones flashing. Beside him, Vanessa gleamed in a crimson gown, her laughter sharp as glass. Tonight, Daniel announced confidently, we're not just growing, we're dominating. Horizon's next phase will redefine the global market. The crowd erupted in cheers. Flash bulbs exploded around him, sealing his arrogance into headlines. But in another part of the city, far from the flashing lights, Emily Carter watched the broadcast on a small screen inside Harriet's bakery. The sound of rain against the window filled the silence between each of Daniel's words. Grace sat beside her coloring, while Ethan did homework quietly at the counter. Harriet placed a hand on Emily's shoulder. You don't have to watch him, she said softly. Emily didn't look away. Oh, I do, she murmured. Every king deserves an audience before his fall. On the screen, Daniel leaned close to a reporter. I owe my success to resilience, he said smugly. When weak people give up, strong ones rebuild. Emily's lips curved slightly. He's quoting me, she whispered. Harriet frowned. That man's pride could set the world on fire. Emily nodded slowly. And I'll let it burn just long enough. Behind the scenes, her quiet network had grown stronger. Clara, Marcus, and Mia worked tirelessly, gathering evidence from Trevor's encrypted accounts. Detective Brian Scott, now secretly briefed by Clara, had begun building a case for financial crimes. Every transaction, every fraudulent file traced back to Daniel and Vanessa. Still, Emily didn't strike. Not yet. She wanted the fall to be public, undeniable, irreversible. Later that night, she tucked the children into bed. Ethan looked up sleepily. Mom, are you sad Daddy's famous again? Emily smiled softly, brushing his hair. No, sweetheart. Sometimes the loudest people are just the most afraid of silence. He nodded, not fully understanding, and drifted off to sleep. When she returned to her desk, an email notification blinked. Subject line, confidential, expansion funding. Partners. Attached was a list of names and companies investing in Horizon's new deal. And among them, one familiar name stood out. E. Gray Holdings, her own alias, her own company. Daniel had unknowingly funded his biggest expansion through her accounts. Emily leaned back, a quiet laugh escaping her lips. You really did build your empire on my name, Daniel. Harriet, standing in the doorway, asked gently, "What's funny?" Emily turned toward her, eyes gleaming. "Nothing, Harriet. Just thinking about how poetic life can be." Outside, thunder rumbled softly, followed by the first flash of lightning. The storm was gathering, not in the sky, but in destiny itself. As Emily shut down her computer, a distant sound echoed. Sirens in the night, growing louder, coming closer. Somewhere across the city, Detective Scott was signing an arrest warrant that would change everything. The morning broke with chaos. Daniel Carter's phone wouldn't stop ringing. Alarms flashed across his office screen. Account access denied, transaction rejected, funds frozen. He slammed his fist on the desk, shouting for Trevor, his CFO. "What's happening?" Trevor Miles rushed in, pale and sweating. "Sir, there's a federal freeze order on all Horizon accounts. The investigators traced multiple offshore transfers. They think it's embezzlement." Daniel's face drained of color. "Embezzlement? Whose name is on those transfers?" Trevor hesitated. "Yours, sir, and Vanessa's." For a moment, the world stopped. Daniel's heartbeat thundered in his ears. "That's impossible. Those accounts were private." Trevor swallowed hard. "Someone leaked the files, every transaction, every signed authorization. It's all out." Daniel's voice broke into a roar. "Find out who did this. I don't care what it costs." But outside his office windows, reporters had already gathered. Headlines scrolled across the screens in the lobby. "Horizon under investigation for $300 million fraud. CEO Daniel Carter faces possible arrest." Vanessa burst through the doors moments later, her designer coat soaked from rain, panic on her face. "Daniel, what is this? They froze my accounts too." He rounded on her. "You said this plan was safe. You said no one could trace it." "Don't you blame me," she screamed back. "You're the one who signed everything." The argument cracked through the office like thunder. Employees whispered. Cameras from the building's lobby began to record through the glass door. Vanessa grabbed her bag and stormed out. "Fix your mess, Daniel. I'm not going down for you." He chased after her, but the flash of cameras blinded him. Reporters shouted his name, demanding answers. He forced his way into his car and sped off through the rain, knuckles white on the steering wheel. Meanwhile, across town, Emily sat in the quiet of Harriet's bakery, her hands covered in flour. Her phone buzzed again and again with notifications, but she didn't pick it up. She already knew. Clara Reed had texted earlier. "The investigation is live. Stay silent. Justice has begun." Emily exhaled slowly, staring at the dough beneath her hands. She pressed it down gently, letting her emotions settle with each movement. There was no celebration, no smile, just peace. Harriet watched her from across the counter. "You're awfully calm for someone whose past just made the evening news." Emily looked up, her voice steady. "I'm not calm, Harriet. I'm just finished crying." Outside, the rain eased, replaced by the faint glow of morning light. The world was shifting, one headline at a time. At that exact moment, Marcus Hale sent one final encrypted email to Detective Scott. The document that would tie everything together. The Van D Holdings link, the $300 million trail, and Daniel's personal signature. In his downtown office, Detective Scott picked up his coat, grabbed the warrant folder, and said quietly, "It's time." As Emily cleaned the flour from her hands, a knock echoed at the bakery door. Sharp, deliberate, and official. A man's voice followed, calm but firm. "Mrs. Carter, Detective Brian Scott, I think it's time we talked." The courtroom buzzed like a hive of whispers and flashing cameras. Reporters filled every seat, their pens scratching as they waited for the story of the year. The fall of Daniel Carter, once hailed as a genius entrepreneur, now accused of stealing $300 million and betraying his own wife. The massive wooden doors opened, and Daniel was led in by officers, his wrists cuffed, his once perfect suit wrinkled and damp with sweat. Across the room, Emily entered quietly, flanked by Clara Reed and Marcus Hale. The crowd murmured. For the first time, the world would see her not as the humiliated wife from the viral video, but as the woman behind E. Gray Holdings. Daniel's eyes met hers, his face twisted between rage, fear, and disbelief. "You?" he whispered under his breath. "You did this?" Emily said nothing, Her calmness unnerved him more than any insult could. She simply took her seat, placing a comforting hand on Ethan's shoulder beside her. Grace sat next to him, clutching a small heart-shaped pin, the same one she had drawn months ago. "Court is now in session," announced Judge Linda Howard, her tone strong and commanding. The irony was sharp. She was the same judge who once denied Emily custody after the divorce, calling her financially unstable. Now her gaze softened as she looked at the woman before her. "Mrs. Carter," she began, "the court acknowledges your presence as both victim and principal witness." Daniel's lawyer rose first, scrambling to paint his client as a misunderstood businessman. "Your Honor, Mr. Carter was deceived by his financial team. He had no idea of the transfers." But then Detective Brian Scott stood, holding up a tablet. "We have time-stamped recordings, emails, and full authorization forms signed by Daniel Carter himself." The screens behind the bench flickered to life, displaying images of bank statements, offshore accounts, and one glaring signature, Daniel's. Gasps filled the courtroom. Daniel's face turned pale. "That's not," he started, but his lawyer silenced him with a trembling hand. Then Clara stood, her voice firm yet elegant. "Your Honor, what Mr. Carter fails to mention is that every one of these stolen funds originated from accounts under Gray Trust Holdings, belonging to my client, Mrs. Emily Carter. He didn't just betray his wife, he stole from her inheritance." The room erupted in shock. Reporters scribbled frantically. Judge Howard leaned forward, her tone grave. "Mr. Carter, do you deny these claims?" Daniel looked around the courtroom, at the cameras, the flashing lights, the faces he once impressed. Then his eyes met Ethan's. The boy's steady, disappointed stare pierced deeper than any verdict could. Ethan stood up slowly, voice trembling but strong. "You taught us what losing means, Dad, but Mom taught us how to stand again." The entire courtroom fell silent. Daniel's shoulders slumped, his arrogance shattered. For the first time, he looked like the man he truly was. Small. Judge Howard banged the gavel. "This court finds Daniel Carter guilty of embezzlement, fraud, and breach of trust." As officers led him away, Daniel turned one last time toward Emily. "Please, Emily, forgive me." She looked at him quietly, her expression unreadable. "The law will forgive you before I ever could." As the courtroom emptied, a journalist whispered into her phone, "The fallen CEO's ex-wife just became the most powerful woman in the city," and outside the sign for Haven Foundation glowed, waiting for its grand unveiling. The crowd outside the old bakery was larger than anyone expected. Cameras clicked, reporters called her name, and the bright morning sun poured over the new sign unveiled above the doors. Haven Foundation for Single Mothers. Emily Carter stood at the center of it all, dressed in a cream suit, her children at her sides. Harriet Cole, her guardian angel, stood proudly beside her, tears glistening in her eyes. The once humble bakery that had sheltered a broken woman now stood reborn as a sanctuary for women rebuilding their lives. "Mommy, look," Grace whispered, pointing to the heart-shaped logo on the banner. The same one she had drawn months ago now gleamed in gold. "It's really ours." Emily smiled softly. "Yes, sweetheart. It belongs to every woman who thought her story was over." The crowd hushed as Michael Trent, a respected journalist and the same reporter who once covered her humiliation, stepped forward to host the ceremony. His voice carried warmth now, not pity. "Today we witness not just a foundation opening, but a life reborn. From betrayal to brilliance, Mrs. Emily Carter has shown us that silence can build empires." Applause rippled through the audience. Emily stepped to the podium, holding the microphone with steady hands. "Months ago," she began, her voice calm and clear, "I was thrown out with nothing but 2 children and a broken heart. The world saw me fall, but what they didn't see was how grace, kindness, and courage rebuilt me. I learned that pain doesn't destroy us, it refines us." She paused, her eyes glistening. "This foundation stands for every woman told she's not enough, every mother left behind, and every dream buried under betrayal. You are not forgotten. You are the beginning of something powerful." The audience rose in applause, some wiping tears. Clara Reed, her loyal lawyer, smiled proudly from the front row. Marcus Hale, the forensic accountant who exposed Daniel's fraud, nodded with quiet satisfaction. Even young Mia Foster stood at the edge of the stage, her eyes filled with admiration, now promoted as the foundation's chief financial officer. Then a hush fell. At the edge of the crowd, a familiar face appeared. Daniel Carter. His once polished suit hung loose. His eyes carried regret instead of pride. Security hesitated, but Emily raised a gentle hand. "It's all right," she said softly. He stepped forward slowly, voice breaking. "Emily, I've lost everything. Vanessa's gone. My father disowned me. I don't even have a home." Emily's expression softened, but her eyes remained firm. "You had everything and lost it trying to prove you were better than love." He fell to his knees. "Please, forgive me." The cameras zoomed in. The crowd waited. Emily's reply was calm, almost kind. "I forgave you the moment I stopped needing your apology, but forgiveness doesn't mean return." She turned, took her children's hands, and faced the reporters. "He sent a message to end us," she said, her voice steady and proud. "I built a legacy to answer it." Applause erupted. Daniel bowed his head as she walked past, dignity radiating with every step. As the ribbon fluttered in the wind, Michael Trent whispered to his cameraman, "They'll write books about this woman." And inside the bakery, a dusty envelope still sat sealed in a drawer. One more letter from Aunt Miriam waiting to be opened.